Well, good morning. Good evening, I should say. If I can get the damn picture up. I don't know why the video didn't play then. Evening and welcome to the badly named Elevenses. We're running some hours behind schedule, as you probably guessed. The excuse I have is due to technical problems this morning. Just as I was getting the show set up at 9 o'clock, my computer went into an update loop and never came out of it. And it took me till about 6 o'clock this evening to actually fix it. So I haven't had long to put the show together, so I'm a bit late. Hopefully everything will run more or less in order. Anyway, it's 11s, it's show number 610, and it's Monday, 27th of July. And with a bit of luck, we'll be back to the Sunday slot next week. Anyway, what have I got for you in today's show? Well, first of all, the story about Damon, the Canadian owned California-based electric motorcycle company has come to an end. It appears that they had put their final bits and pieces in a storage locker, which they didn't pay for, and so when the rent ran out, the storage locker was auctioned off to an anonymous buyer who found the sort of part assembled prototype in the locker. So that we'll come on to that story in a bit more detail. Irish government, they have brought in some tough e-scooter laws. Northumbria police, they're tackling an illegal e-bike use, but they ended up crushing a legal cargo e-bike in the process in West Midlands when doing the same sort of operation. A German e-startup, Black Tea, is the latest electric motorcycle company to go into insolvency, but new bike registrations across Europe are on the up. And Moto Guzzi are opening a state-of-the-art production facility with a visitor centre and a cafe. I haven't put that in the notes, but Harley Davidson's sales have climbed very slightly too. We'll have a look at some UK board news in brief, then we'll have a look at Pirelli's plans to recycle tyres, Yamaha's battery swap scoot, which uses the Honda power pack, CFMOTO's 800 MTES. Is it a premium adventure bike that is actually at an affordable price? We'll have a quick look at that. And then today we'll look at a real life problem that a rider faced just the other day. What do you do if you find you're going head on with an overtaking truck? So grab yourself a biscuit, settle yourselves down, and join me for the next few minutes while I run through those particular stories. I'd also just like to take a moment to thank last week's subscribers and supporters for generously supporting the show. We've got Mike K. Simmons, Nick Damo, Mike, who also bought all three of the Crash Scene books, Junction Corner and Overtake, Rob, Brian, and Anonymous. So thanks to all of you for supporting me and supporting this show. Right, okay, so let's get on with some news. Now, the first story today is that last week, you may remember I was talking about the sort of universal non-overridable speed limiter on vehicles. That story in the motorcycle press, it didn't exactly say that it was being brought in by the government, but it did kind of drop a rather heavy hint. And in fact, it's only in discussion. It's being talked about to a parliamentary select committee who then give a report to government, which gets considered at a future stage. So it's far from being something that's bound to happen. As I said, there is some clear evidence that supporting lower speed limits does have benefits in reducing crash severity. But how do you shift people to that behavioural change? Now, visible police patrols have always had only a limited effect. One police driver I knew, he said that he basically drove his job car in a law-abiding bubble while it was the Wild West, anywhere out of sight. And that's why sort of stealth techniques have been evolving. But the thing is, there is expertise in those cars too. Now, back in December last year, the Met Police Service announced it was withdrawing from the Bike Safe scheme and shutting down its dedicated motorcycle safety team in London. Now, this was just as the scheme actually hit its 25th anniversary and has been supported by more forces than any other than before everywhere else. Anyway, Transport for London says that funding for traffic enforcement is increasing, but they did confirm that specialist traffic units, motorcycles, cycles, and commercial vehicles would be folded into a new road danger reduction team, and this was due to start in February 2026. So presumably that has gone ahead. Now, I noted that funding for traffic enforcement is increasing. More on that in a moment. Now, this did sound like an organisational reshuffle, only now, 8 months on from the announcement, and just 6 months or so, 5 months or so from the actual rearrangement, we're hearing that the police are actually considering scrapping their entire roads and transport policing command from the Met altogether, with roads policing being absorbed into general policing. And this is all, of course, put forward as a cost-saving measure. Now, the latest proposal suggests that this is actually a much more fundamental change in the way that the roads will be policed. And it's being argued, not unreasonably, I think, that it risks losing specialist expertise in traffic policing, collision investigation, and proactive road crime enforcement. Now, coming back to that enforcement investment, if this means more cameras, that doesn't mean better policing. Cameras are relatively cheap to install in and run, but the problem is that speed cameras, bus lane cameras, red light cameras, box junction cameras, no right turn cameras, whatever camera you like, it only enforces a rule that has just been broken. It can only detect the offence after a driver has made the decision to do whatever it is that they're not supposed to do. And very often the driver is actually unaware that they're even committing an offence. Now, I got caught by a camera a couple of years ago and got a fixed penalty because I turned into a road that I turned out of just a few minutes earlier. It turned out that what I couldn't see, it wasn't until I got the picture through the post, was that parallel to my direction of travel was a road sign telling me that that access was closed off from sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 5 o'clock or something. And it turned out I was a minute or two outside the legal period, up to 3 or whatever it was, turning into that area. So cameras don't pick out the dangerous rider. They don't pick up the person who's actually out there on a stolen motorcycle. They don't pick up the scooter rider on sort of county lines drug activity. And they can't have a sort of friendly, don't be silly word with the rider at the roadside either. These are all things that cameras simply can't do. Now, it's ironic, really, given that current government strategy is talking about substantially reducing deaths and serious injuries over the next decade, that we are actually taking away these specialist police who might help with that. Right, now, hopefully, my pictures are all over the place again. I have no idea why, but I've got this one up now. It's the weather for the next 7 days or so. Now, another heat wave is on the way, but it's not likely to last all that long, with a sting in the tail, and it won't affect Northern Ireland or the north of the country either, where it will stay mostly cooler and wetter too. Now, tomorrow, that sort of cloud and rain will push through the north and northwest of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it will clear away to the northeast during the afternoon. So there should be some scattered heavy showers. Variable cloud and sunshine elsewhere. Temperature will be much warmer in the south. I forgot to say it'll be about 15 in the far north. Peak temperatures in the southeast, East Anglia and the East Midlands will be around 30 degrees. Now, on Wednesday, the wind will actually change direction slightly, and it will come in from the south, and that will bring the very hot air that's been across mainland Europe into the United Kingdom. So it's likely that under mostly sunny conditions, temperatures across the south and the east are likely to hit the mid-30s, and temperatures will extend into the high 20s right up to southeast Scotland. Eastern coasts will be cooler, slightly cooler, and the far north of Scotland still likely to see temperatures down in the mid-teens as rain pushes eastwards. Now, it will turn sunny for most on Thursday, heavier showers lingering though in the far north for a time. It will remain very warm again in the southeast on Thursday, but slightly fresher conditions, bringing the temperatures down to the mid-teens, will push into north of England, the Wales and sort of West Midlands area. Friday looks like another sunny, very warm day in the south, showery activity reactivating across the north. And then, as I say, a bit of a sting in the tail of just slightly cooler weekend and a slightly cooler beginning for next week. It looks like temperatures could climb again towards the end of next week. So if you're a bit fed up with the hot weather, bad luck. It's still with us for the time being. Now, I mentioned Damon Motors earlier and the fact they finally reached the end of the line for them. Now, I've revisited their story many times, but if you don't remember them, they were a Canadian-based or Canadian-owned startup based in California, and they promised the magic 200 electric motorcycle, 200 horsepower, 200 miles per hour, 200-mile range. It would be packed with all the latest in AI safety technology systems, in fact so late they haven't been built yet, and revolutionary technology, which was also still to be developed. Now, they attracted thousands of deposits, they raised millions from investors, and they even floated on the stock market. But after years of delays, press releases touting their new developments, more delays, the odd appearance of a prototype that was shown off and ridden even by journalists, but not a single production bike ever reached customers. Damon did try to do a little bit of a pivot and start to sell their technology, but the end of the road has finally arrived. It seems that the first Damon bike ever to pass into private ownership wasn't actually delivered to a buyer at all. The machine turned up minus bodywork and minus a front end in a storage locker that was auctioned off because the rent hadn't been paid. And that is a rather sad ending, really, for a company that once claimed it would revolutionize motorcycling. Now, another story over in Ireland. There have been months and months of escalating concern, with hospitals reporting that 1 or 2 children every day present themselves with e-scooter injuries during the summer. And they've also reported a 50% increase in traumatic brain injuries among children last year from e-scooter crashes. And so the Irish government has decided to step in, and they are imposing a package of tough measures on their use. And this is what they are going to do. First of all, the minimum age limit for the use of an e-step scooter will increase from 16 to 18. It will be mandatory to wear helmets and high visibility clothing. E-scooters, and this is dramatic really, they will be treated as mechanically propelled vehicles, meaning licensing and registration will both be introduced later this year. The sale of these scooters to minors will be prohibited. The sale of scooters exceeding the legal speed limit will be prohibited, although quite what that means, I'm not entirely sure. And the Garda, they will receive greater legal protection when pursuing riders because they believe that e-scooters are increasingly used in drug dealing and other criminal activity. Now, there had been calls for an outright ban, and the government, in fact, says that remains on the table if these measures fail. Now, we're now about 6 years on from the sort of COVID micro mobility boom back in 2020 and 2021. E-scooters, they're being portrayed as green transport, congestion relief, first and last mile transport, fun, and crucially, the future. Governments were generally keen to encourage them, at least in trials with e-scooters provided by rental companies. But now the conversation has shifted quite dramatically, and as the impact of traumatic injury, antisocial behavior, and organized crime, the danger to other road users. And we're seeing more and more interventions, including licensing, enforcement, seizures, even outright bans on use. And that's a remarkable change in narrative. But, why is it taking so long? Why is there still no clear plan to move forward in the UK here? Now, the irony in some ways is that motorcycling has spent decades becoming more related, but micro-mobility arrived with absolutely nothing really in the regulatory infrastructure. It's only now, as sort of the injuries and misuse have become hard to ignore, that governments are actually starting to apply some of the same principles that have governed the use of motorized vehicles of the conventional kind for decades. So over in Illinois, for example, they are tackling the related problem of e-bikes. And what they're doing is defining 4 categories of bicycle, from conventional pedal cycle through to high-powered e-bikes, which would allow those machines to be, which are capable of 30 to 40 miles per hour, to operate legally. So this is a completely new framework, really, and it basically moves the different power outputs of e-cycles from the sort of grey area between a bicycle and motorcycle. But obviously, there's a big question: what category will a particular vehicle belong in? How will you prove it? What if a vehicle is judged by the manufacturer's claimed specification to be in one category, but a roadside test proves it's of a different capability? This matters because many of these illegal machines are actually illegally modified, illegally de-restricted, or simply mislabeled. Now, Northumbria have been working hard to take some of these illegal things off the road, and they reported that more than 30 motorcycles, e-bikes and scooters were confiscated, 23 arrests made. This was a special anti-social behaviour awareness week earlier this month, so patrols were out looking across parks, green spaces, town centres and also coastal areas, using a range of tactics, including drones, local authorities support, road safety teams, and I love this one, the Odyssey, of course, being in the news at the moment. They used a Trojan bus, which was apparently a fake bus full of undercover officers who leapt out and caught illegal riders. Now, the prize was a pedal bike, which was converted to an e-bike, and the force alleged it was capable of reaching speeds up to 72 miles per hour, which I find very, very hard to believe. I wonder how they tested it, because there is a badly designed testing regime out there which is risking catching legitimate users alongside real offenders. Now, it's recently been revealed that back in April, West Midlands Police, they destroyed a fully legal e-cargo bike that had been rented out by a bike shop as part of a council-funded scheme, because the officers performed a sort of an ad hoc roadside test. What they did was they lifted the rear wheel off the ground and then they spun the pedals as hard as they could to see what the speedo registered. Well, of course, with no resistance to the back wheel, the speedo went up and up and up and up, and it climbed reportedly well above the 15.5 miles per hour, 25 kilometers per hour assistance limit. And this was taken as proof that the Turn Cargo e-bike, worth around £6,500, was in fact an illegal e-motorcycle. It was seized, it was crushed, the rider written up for riding without insurance. Now, when challenged over this flawed speed test, the fixed penalty was dropped, and the police are now compensating the owner and said to be reviewing their procedures. Now, I think this is all symptomatic of the bigger story that, as I said, the government's only suddenly waking up to the fact that if a vehicle like this is capable of mixing with traffic, there needs to be a proper regulatory framework, not simply the sort of fix it as we go along arrangements that work on a sort of outdated vehicle definitions of motorbike and cycle. Okay, so let me take a quick break whilst I send you back to the video for a moment, and so I can have a cuppa. Where's my video gone? As always, can I ask you to take a moment to like and subscribe to this show if you've not already done so? Every click helps other motorcyclists discover my content, or simply share the word the old-fashioned way by telling your riding buddies about Elevenses. They can watch on catch-up. Remember, my latest riding skills articles are always free, and you can get all the links delivered weekly to your email inbox by subscribing to my newsletter at survivalskills.substack.com. Or you can use this QR code to jump straight to it, when the show's over, of course. No spam, and if you don't like the content, unsubscribe at any time. Right, I'm back, hopefully with the right graphic in a moment. Now we're going to have a quick look at some UK world news in brief. I always have a chuckle at statistics like this, but a Transport Focus survey apparently revealed that 71% of drivers are satisfied with England's motorways and major A roads. That's up from up by 2% on last year, so it's being claimed as a major victory, of course. It's said to be the result of improved journey times and roadwork management. What was the driver's favourite motorway? It was the M20 in Kent. That's one leading to Folkestone from London. Now, I suspect voters didn't include many of the London-bound commuters who regularly get stuck on that road in the morning, or anybody who has to divert off of it when Operation Stack is in operation. Likewise, just how the A30 was ranked the best A road, I have no idea, having spent many a happy hour sat on that particular one, stuck in the summer getaway jams. 7 people have been convicted following a major motorcycle theft operation in Chelmsford. 54 motorcycles and mopeds were stolen with a combined value of almost £250,000. And they were taken over a 5-month period in late 2024 and early 2025. Now, footage of some of the thefts had been circulating on social media. Now, having identified the group involved, officers carried out coordinated raids and they recovered evidence, including cash, phones, tools, and clothing. Meanwhile, a new motorcycle safety initiative in Hampshire is receiving a £20,000 funding boost to help reduce rider casualties. The Doc Bike programme will engage with younger riders and it will use sort of the rider engagement, first aid training, safety awareness sessions, and it will have support from Hampshire's road policing unit. Now, the approach is about starting conversations, improving knowledge and decision making, and helping people to understand the factors that contribute to collisions. Now, if you know anything about what I've been doing with Science of Being Seen, I am actually delivering that presentation now and have been for the last 18 months or so for Doc Bike in Sussex, and very grateful to them to let me actually get involved and hopefully do some good. So it is important, I think, to try to understand why crashes happen. Then it's easier to do something about them. Now, if I can find the right photo, which I probably can't, over there, maybe I've got it there. Okay, so let me have a quick look at that. Add to stage, there it is. And what do we see there? Well, we see a Scottish police car with a drone sat on the bonnet. Now, this is a trial that's been going on in the Scottish borders. And if traditional traffic units continue to shrink, as I talked about earlier on in the show, I think it is a tactic we're likely to see rather more of, the drones out in Devon and Cornwall as well. Now, the police say the initiative isn't simply about catching people speeding. Officers will actually use the drone footage to show riders their own riding, and then they can have a conversation about risk. In the trial, riders have been offered the chance to review the footage of their riding behaviour, with the stated aim being reflection, education, and safer choices rather than just punishment. I don't know whether that's just as opposed to unjust punishment or only punishment. Anyway, is this the future? Well, drones instead of traffic officers? Well, technology, I think, can certainly help track down risky behaviour on 2 wheels or 4. But, again, it's that question, is it replacing specialist expertise with just more surveillance? The Scottish approach does actually seem, at the moment at least, be more than just catch the offender. So it may help some riders see themselves from the outside. Right, okay, now if you enjoy these shows, why not become a member of my Ko-fi pages? Just follow the QR code and sign up. As a member, you get free access to the latest articles and the Survival Skills ebook shop, with instant downloads of everything from free mini ebooks to ebook versions of my paperbacks. Become a one-off supporter and you'll open up the archive of over 1,000 articles. If you buy me a monthly cuppa as a subscriber, there's even more content to enjoy. Right, I think I've actually... stop the video. Sorry about that, press the wrong button. That's what we're supposed to be seeing. Remove that, add that. Right. Okay. So what do we got here? Well, this is the Black Tea motorcycle. Now, this is another electric motorcycle company which has run into trouble. They're a German startup. They founded in 2019. They launched this range of what they called retro style electric motorcycles, which combined this sort of classic, they called it, styling with electric power. Now, I think they look like a dog's dinner, but that's me. Anyway, the point is that they have now gone into insolvency. The company claimed to have raised funding. They claim to have taken pre-orders. They even claim to have built a following amongst riders looking for an affordable, lightweight electric alternative. But it seems that it's another company who haven't solved the problem of switching from small batch runs on a sort of built on almost one-off basis to genuine commercial production. Now, coming days after that final collapse of Damon, it does paint a gloomy picture of electric motorcycle business generally. If Damon had a vision, they had no way to turn it into a motorcycle. Black Tea had a product, but apparently couldn't sell it to enough buyers. One company ran out of engineering, the other appears to have run out of economics. So let's bring in a little bit more good news then. Harley-Davidson's latest financial results are in. They're better than expected because their global motorcycle sales have edged up by around 1%. And that's been driven by a 3% increase in sales in North America, though overall profits were still down. They say that's due to changes in Harley's financial services business. But just possibly, it's the strategy to reintroduce some affordable machines might be paying off. You remember I covered that story recently. Now, new bike registrations across Europe, they're on the up. Germany led the way, apparently, across the 5 main markets, but the UK also recorded a strong rise, suggesting that in Europe at least, the bike sales market really is recovering from the disruption caused by Euro 5 Plus changes and economic uncertainty, and also obviously the woes of KTM. And in Italy, Moto Guzzi is also showing plenty of enthusiasm for the future, having opened a brand new, or will open a brand new factory and a museum. They will be launched during the 2026 Moto Guzzi World Days in September. Now, the new state-of-the-art production facility is being built by Piaggio on the same site at Mandello del Lario, where Moto Guzzi has been making motorcycles continuously since 2021. Start again, 1921. As well as the factory and the museum, there will be a visitor centre, a cafe and retail space as all part of the redevelopment. So we'll turn the historic site into a destination for riders as well as a manufacturing plant. But if you want proof of just how much motorcycle industry has changed, look no further than Royal Enfield. The Indian manufacturer has just reported 330,427 motorcycle sales in just 3 months. That's more bikes than many of the well-known global brands sell in an entire year. Most were 350cc models for the huge Indian domestic market, but exports also continue to grow strongly. Now, here's an interesting one. Pirelli has announced it's working on recycling old motorcycle tyres. I'm sure you know that there are retreaded tyres used by trucks. So this is one of those ideas that it maybe sounds obvious. So why hasn't it happened before? Well, the simple answer is been technically and economically very difficult. A motorcycle tyre isn't just rubber. It actually contains a cocktail of specialist chemicals which are bonded together around a textile and steel core, and separating them without degrading them enough so that they cannot be reused as a premium tyre has proved a major challenge. But Pirelli believes that they've finally cracked the problem, and they're using a process called pyrolysis to recover the sort of the high quality carbon black which is in the tyre and the tyre oil, and that can then be turned back into new tyre compounds through a closed loop recycling process. Now, if this can be translated into scale production, it's potentially a significant breakthrough, because currently old tyres are burnt, they are shredded for road resurfacing, or even just dumped as landfill, and they could instead become the material for the next generation of tyres. So Pirelli is rolling this out in Germany. So the question is, can this move beyond a pilot project and become the new normal for the tyre industry? Right, let's see if I can find a picture of the next little bike I want to show you. There it is indeed, I have it. Looks like my photos are in order. Right, may not look very exciting, little shopping trolley scooters, but the failure of companies as disparate as Damon and Black Tea really does suggest that the winners in the sort of electric bike market will probably be those who actually recognize where a bike is viable. And that's why Yamaha has launched this Gear EV scooter in Japan. It's designed specifically for the delivery and commercial user market. Now, what does it run on? Two removable Honda mobile power pack batteries, which give around 100 kilometers range. So instead of simply, plugging in for a recharge, operators can simply lift out the battery from under the seat, plug in a new one, and they can keep working. Now, battery swapping isn't a new idea. It's been touted for years. It's been established in Taiwan, I think, since 2020. I'm sure I was talking about it on the first shows I was delivering during lockdown. But Yamaha's involvement shows that the industry may finally be moving towards this model that makes, I think, most sense for electric two-wheelers. Now, a swap system turns the battery from a worry into a service you access when needed, just like refueling with petrol. You might have to stop a bit more often, but it's doable. And Yamaha aren't attempting to invent an entirely new kind of battery that isn't compatible with any other bike out there either. These batteries are actually from a Japanese industry consortium that involves Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki, and I think Kimco, if I remember correctly, too. And the idea is to provide this common standard battery with a company called Gachako providing the battery sharing infrastructure in Japan. So, maybe the lesson is that the winning formula isn't a £25,000 electric superbike, nor a sort of an electric bike that attempts to look like a classic 125 petrol engine bike, but something more practical, lightweight, affordable machine for urban transport and commercial use, with the instant torque, the low running costs, and the rapid battery swaps being far more important than outright range and speed. Right, so let's have a look at a bike which isn't electric, and this is it. This is the CFMOTO 800 MTES, and I thought this was quite an interesting bike. It's arrived in showrooms, I believe, right this moment. It's not particularly revolutionary from the mechanical point of view, because underneath it is a standard 799cc parallel twin, produces about 91 horsepower, 6-speed gearbox, slipper clutch, bi-directional quick shifter, etc., etc., etc. I think what is more interesting is the electronics package, because this isn't the typical bike that you might expect that comes with sort of unbranded suspension. It's got KYB electronically controlled suspension at either end. It's got a Bosch 6-axis IMU, which allows it to have cornering ABS as well as usual traction control. It also gets wheelie control if you want that, torque, drag control, riding modes, and you get cruise control as well, of course. The machine also gets tire pressure monitoring, heated grips and seats, and even blind spot radar. So that is the package that you get. Now, just a few years ago, this sort of technology, you'd only find it on adventure flagship bikes, and you'd be looking at sort of 1,500 or considerably more. And today, CFMOTO is actually offering this on a bike that costs under £9,000 here in the UK, 8,499 plus on the road costs, if you want the precise number. So compare that with bikes like the Multistrada V2. Compare that with the BMW F900 GS, even the latest 890 KTM Adventure. They might be sort of close competitors in terms of the capacity and the purpose and now the technology, but they come with that really quite significantly heavier price tag too. So the question remains, where are the compromises? The established manufacturers, of course, will argue you're not just buying the components, you're buying decades of engineering experience, dealer networks, parts availability, proven durability, and a brand reputation built over generations, although some owners might quibble about some of those claims. So what are you risking by going Chinese? Well, I don't think you can say that Chinese manufacturers are simply cheap anymore. They are offering a specification that seems to be pretty damned high spec. And they can do that not because they're cutting corners, but they're operating at scales that, alongside Indian manufacturers, we just talked about Enfield, for example, but there's also Bajaj and TVS, of course. They're operating at a scale that traditional European and Japanese manufacturers are going to struggle to match. So, this bike, maybe it won't win every comparison test. People still do have some kind of, doubts about buying Chinese. But you kind of start having to ask that question. Why am I going to be paying £5,000 more for a bike if it's got just the same features as one I can buy for under £9,000? And that's a question that the established manufacturers are going to struggle to ignore. So I think we may well see a retrenching away from the sort of ultra high performance, ultra priced bikes back to some, if you can call a 90 horsepower bike a workhorse, something with more function than form. Right, okay, so on to the final topic for the day. This is where I get into something that has probably happened out on the road to one or two of you in the past. Now, this I'm going to be talking about at the moment a motorcycle in Essex narrowly avoided a head-on collision. I can send you the link to the video, and that indeed is what I'm going to do right this moment. It'll go up in the comments stream. Right, you should see that on the comment stream any moment. That's a Yahoo video story and the video. So what happened? Well, the rider, as I said, just avoided a head-on collision with a lorry that was driving on the wrong side of the road. Now, the incident happened near the Lakeside Shopping Centre in Essex, just on the Essex side of the Dartford crossing, and it was on July the 16th. And it appears what had happened was there had been a crash near junction 31 of the M25, and while they were sorting that out, the traffic had backed up. So drivers had been stuck several hours in this jam on a single track road. Sorry, not single track, a single carriageway road. So 2 lanes, white line down the middle, 1 lane of traffic going in each direction. A single carriageway. Now, the rider was quoted as saying in the story, "As an experienced rider, I always expect the unexpected, and I expected cars doing U-turns. But this wasn't something I expected. It wasn't a pleasant moment. I locked the rear wheel. It was an emergency stop for me. I was pinned against the curb. I left a black mark from my tyre all the way down the road from braking." Now, the truck was being followed by a Subaru. The motorcyclist reported the incident. He's shared footage with Essex police, who have confirmed to the press that a report of driving without due care and attention is being processed. Now, go and have a look at the video when you get a moment. It's a genuinely frightening piece of footage. So what can we take away from this particular incident? Well, I know very well that the immediate reaction from many people will be, what was the truck driver doing on the wrong side of the road? It is a fair question, but there is another that matters rather more to the rider. What were the clues before the truck appeared, and when the truck did appear, what could the rider do about it? Well, the rider's own comment is revealing. He said he was expecting cars doing U-turns because of the stationary traffic, but he didn't expect a lorry coming the other way. But this is exactly how our brains work. We prepare for eventualities based on experience. We prepare for likely hazards. And that's the problem with something exceedingly rare like this. It's often the one that catches us out. Now, the long queue of stationary traffic creates frustrated drivers, and some, of course, will make a U-turn to turn around. So it was good that the rider was thinking that far ahead. But obviously, that wasn't the only choice. Now, the rider said he was doing around 40 in a 50 zone. So maybe a further reduction in speed would have been sensible. Even at 40 miles an hour, you don't have a great deal of chance to react if a driver doesn't spot you and starts to pull a U-turn. So maybe shedding a few more miles per hour would have been a starting point, and that would have given the rider a little more time when he did spot the truck. Now, it's not possible to see from that video clip just where the truck hove into view because it's been edited short. But it looks from the layout of the road to have been at least a couple of 100 meters away. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm blaming the rider, but could he have reacted sooner? My guess is this. Because he wasn't expecting an oncoming vehicle on the wrong side of the road, it actually took him several seconds to recognize what was happening and to begin to react. And it's possible that right to the very last, he expected the truck to stop. And this is the biggest issue, really, with encountering the unexpected. It eats into our reaction time as we work out what we're seeing. But we also expect the other drivers to do the thing we're expecting them to do, which would be, logically, if you're driving down the wrong side of the road and suddenly the road is full of motorcycle, to stop and let the motorcycle pass. Now, I'm not talking from theory here, actually. This has happened to me several times in the past. Most recently, I was up in the Cambrian Mountains in Wales with my partner. I realized a truck was approaching, and I very quickly realized that it wasn't slowing down either. I also realized that there wasn't time to sort of kind of argue the toss with the driver by stopping in the middle of the road and waving at him or anything like that. The only option I did have was to get out of the way. And so pretty early on, I identified a patch of gravel at the side of the road, which looked firm enough to aim for. And I pulled over and I stopped and got a firm footing before the truck passed me. Now, it was the good news that I did identify that in good time, because the truck came past so close and so rapidly, as it appears to have done to the rider in Essex too, that the wind of its passage actually rocked the bike quite hard, and I was happy to have a firm footing on my left foot. So what gave me a bit of an edge here? Well, it was basically identifying the problem earlier and recognizing what I could do about it. The big lesson here really isn't about becoming paranoid. You just have to accept that the roads do contain some unpredictable humans who don't do the right thing every time. So, see one, assume the worst. See a vehicle approach you on the wrong side of the road, head-on collision, don't assume that it's going to pull back out of your way. Anticipation beats last-second reaction when you realize, blimey, it's not stopping, every single time. The lesson of this really remains the same. I'm a bit surprised, perhaps, that the drivers are only being looked at in terms of a driving without due care and attention charge at the moment. It looks to me like it might easily be upgraded to dangerous driving, but I'm not court official or anything, so I don't know about that. But the final lesson really is exactly the same regardless. You cannot prosecute your way out of a crash that has already happened. So after the event, retribution doesn't really help you very much. Right, so it's time to wrap up the show, but before I go, it seems like an apt time just to give you a quick reminder of the crash scene books. I've updated the ebooks now with exterior covers. Crash Scene Corner, that takes in a look at the most common open road crash of all, when we get bends wrong. Crash scene junction tackles the "sorry mate, I didn't see you" collision between driver and rider at intersections, still the most common collision of all. And the third is crash scene overtake, and that it looks at the third of the standard motorcycling gotchas. Now, all three books approach riding skills from the opposite angle to the usual ride better and you won't crash approach. I've turned it on its head, and I explain how even skilled and experienced riders get things wrong. And I provide you with the clues that hopefully will help you to avoid making the same mistakes. I know I've been promising this for a while, but paperbacks are in preparation and they will be available soon. All right, that is it for today. Thank you to everybody who has waited ever since 11 o'clock on Sunday morning for this show. Thank you for looking in a day and a half late. Thank you if you are also watching on catch up. You've been watching me, Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. He's been watching Elevenses. So make a date to join me for the next show for another roundup of news, views, and biking tips, which, if all goes well and the computer doesn't do its dump its innards everywhere again, I will get out on Sunday. And if you are out there enjoying the weather on your bike over the next few days, make sure you stay shiny side up, and I'll see you for the next show. And with a bit of luck, I'll have a video for you to play you out. No, I won't. Yes, I will.